crossing the border and being exposed to two different cultures means that you have the best from both worlds. You can pick and choose what you want to do, what you want to practice, where you want to go, what you want to value. You know, you get to enjoy food, culture, language, places. But to be exposed to the best of both worlds also means that there is a sacrifice to that freedom of both worlds. And sometimes that sacrifice, actually many times for transborder students, looks like exhaustion. It looks like long commutes. It looks like very long days. And it's a sacrifice because you do get exposed to that beauty, but also you get exposed to the militarization, the violence, the hyper surveillance of what is the borderlands and the U.S. ports of entry every single day. That is a context and environment that transborder students have to cross and engage and be in every single day for that sacrifice of the best of both worlds.
I have to wake up really early to make it to school on time. I'm talking about 4 a.m. I can think of really terrible situations where I'd, crammed studying really late at night and was falling asleep. I remember there's a couple of times, honestly, where I'd fall asleep at the border, waiting in line and wake up with cars honking because the other cars were getting in front of me. And I had literally, I don't know for how long, fallen asleep. And I do recall several instances, and this is just me being very real, where I'd be on time for the exam, but think I have 30 minutes to sleep in my car, and I'd fall asleep and miss the exam. Talking about a, biology quiz that you'd crammed, So yeah, the commute was really hard.
To arrive to class, it was very exhausting. Depending on the day, the time, it could be anywhere from 4 hours to, during 9/11, sometimes 6-8 hours round trip, just to be able to, pursue my human right to an education, really.
I used to go in at the state lab in Mexicali at 7 a.m. Then they moved my ship at 6:30 a.m. So before I was waking up at 5 a.m., then I have to wake up at 4:30. Then for whatever reasons with traffic, 4 a.m. So 4 a.m. was usually my time to wake up.
Again, the obstacles are twofold. Some of the most challenging are directly related to the border and border enforcing policies. Those challenges that exist on one side or the other, sometimes we get those challenges twofold, like racism, discrimination, being told at times by other people that you don't belong. You don't belong here, you don't belong there, you don't belong in the U.S., you don't belong in Mexico, you're not American, you're not Mexican. With my work in research, I try to have a counter experience for the transborder scholars I work with, where it's about soy de aquí, soy de allá, and belonging to both places.
I grew up in Mexicali. Mexicali, we say it that it's the city that captured the sun. So the city that captured the sun, it's super hot, but it is a relatively small city at the end of the day. A lot of my family, everyone, friends grew up on there, finished my high school studies, and went to take my bachelor's in TJ. After that, I had the opportunity to come to the States more so for needs rather than wants. Because of my family and my dad's health condition, I ended up coming here, and my only plans for the States were mainly having my master's degree and just keep on experiencing and helping out on my STEM major. That didn't happen. That I ended up taking care of my dad and my mom. My dad with his cancer, my mom wasn't able to take care of him. Then she had a fracture, and so I took care of them. And life ended up bringing me steps and steps forward to stay in the States. And now I happily live here.
every day was different. There wasn't like a normal routine. Now, like think of my routine now, how it doesn't deviate as much from being a routine. There is a routine. I think what's different when you're crossing the border every day is that everything can be very different each day, depending on what's happening. The tension of the Border Patrol agent, you'd have the spectrum of Border Patrol agents from super kind and jovial Border Patrol agents who are in good moods and really grumpy ones that asked you a series of questions. And, I had the privilege to be a U.S. citizen and didn't feel like I had to hide much of where I was actually living. And so I could say, I'm coming from home, I'm going to school. And for most agents that would be okay, and for some it would not be okay. And then they would ask more questions.
I just can't imagine the challenges for students to really get in-person classes, like they have to go through, just cross the border, take the line system, then take buses, and that's a challenge in itself. But for folks that have their own car, still the challenge is that it's just like crossing the border left and right, and God forbid, whenever you're close to that border patrol and it's like, what if they send me to secondary inspection? That's another half an hour, another hour just to wait up and see. Hopefully you'll get somewhere in time.
Do you have like a one day at the crossing the border that sticks out to you as like a particularly rough experience?
Oh my goodness. Not exactly secondary, but the thing was that I was so rushed. I think like that week was the first chemo for my dad, and so I was so focused in that I wasn't thinking or didn't see really like my plates, that they were expired. And so I was rushing. I'm like, I have 10 minutes to get to work. I need to. And so I'm rushing, I'm driving, and I'm crossing the border to Mexico. And the border patrols from the Mexican side tell me like, your plates are expired. You can cross to Mexico this way. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's like, you can't. Either you go back, you leave your car, and you find a way to get there, to get to your workplace, or you find another car. That's it. So they returned me. They got me back to the States, figured out I had another car. I arrived like an hour late for work. So yeah, that was rough.
My identity is a Chicana woman, Latina. I have roots from Sinaloa and Chihuahua, from my mom, my dad, and my grandparents. Most of my family moved here first with my grandpa, who was trabajaba en los fields por muchos años. He was the one that started that moving here would benefit us all for a better future.
My parents, my mom, she's from Guadalajara. She had to move to Mexicali like when she was 13. Por voluntad propia, no. So it was a little by my grandparents. And she had a really difficult childhood and not good learning experience in school. For my studies, I never crossed the border. I only crossed the border because I live with my mom. And I used to visit my dad on the weekends. So I would pretty much often cross maybe Fridays to Mexicali and then come back on Sundays at night.
Okay, so you were crossing every day to go to school for at least a couple of years then, is that right?
No, I never crossed for my education. So my reason for crossing was actually for my mom. So we lived here, but my mom was teaching in Mexicali. So my mom is actually a retired elementary teacher. Every time that I had a day free, I would go and cross with her. And we didn't have Sentry, we didn't have anything, so I know what it feels like to be in the line for more than over 4 hours. And then in the heat, I know what it is to have your car all of a sudden not work in the middle of making line. Sometimes I had to be at school a whole hour early because she had to leave the house at 6. and school wasn't even open, and I had to be outside waiting and waiting, sometimes in the heat, until they opened the doors for us to go inside. I'm an only child, and when we crossed, it was 3 of us with my dad, and all of a sudden, it was just us 2. And so I'm thinking, okay, she's bettering my future on this side. What's 1 hour, right, for me? She's doing so many other things for me, right? And so the minute she left and I got out of school, it was going from house to house. Sometimes one person would take care of me, sometimes the other person would take care of me. So I wouldn't see my mom for hours and hours and hours. Sometimes the line was so horrible that she would just let me sleep with whoever it was at that point. The main thing for her and for me was the fact that I wasn't in a stable place. There was no security. I always felt kind of like como una muñeca, no? Like a doll, like or even like I don't want to say a pet, let's just say a doll, de que te la paso y te la paso y te la paso y nomás se estaban pasando a perla, and they were just going around with it, you know, and I would never be passed to my mom because she couldn't.
My experiences for me as growing up in elementary were not good. Most of my teachers and professors didn't treat me that kindly. So I was pretty much alone in that. And then I don't really remember my time in Mexicali, like going to school. I can't remember anything, just the fact that I went there.
Do you think the fact that you don't remember, is that like a trauma response, do you think?
Maybe, but actually in Mexicali, like the school, I didn't really have that much trauma, like with my teachers, because como dije, casi nunca estaban.
It's really all going back to the sacrifice, right? It sounds horrible that now, because now that she's retired, she says, well, now I can spend time with you, right? But then I have now all of this going on, and it's, we can't get that back, you know, you can't get those times back, but, you know, always gonna be grateful for what she did, that I'm here because of her.
Pretty much my whole life's been a challenge for me, especially because of my parents. So I live in Calexico and I have to visit my dad in Mexicali. So like coming and going back and forth, like on the weekends or maybe every day sometimes, it was really difficult for me because I felt like I missed out experiences or like events from my family, like on both sides. Like sometimes I couldn't go with my dad or sometimes I couldn't come back with my mom. I guess no one can ever do something about like having 2 lives here in the Prior Valley in Mexicali. I have to live with it and like find something, like ver algo en lo bueno y en lo malo de no sé, nunca se puede arreglar, pero they just try to find balance in both lives. I didn't really think about being a teacher until I was like maybe in my senior year in high school. The one who gave me the idea was my mom, because I wanted to be something else. I actually wanted to be an author since I like to read and write. So my mom kind of told me what my plans were and what I want to do with my life. So I wasn't really sure. So she said like, well, if you're really good at reading or writing, maybe you can become a teacher. And I was like, that sounds interesting. So I started researching about it, like looking at both Calexico-Mexicali. I think I want to have like both the experiences from both sides to be able to tell like my future like students, like the experiences I had growing up, like if whether in school, like personal. I feel we have to know about both.
A lot of things are changing in the education system. If anything, I would like that to push me to make that change, right? Because now I'm seeing things that benefited me as a student as a transborder student that they took away. And I feel like they're pushing them away from one side. And I think that's one of the things that as an educator, I don't want to do. I don't want to have a student like myself, like I once was, and tell them, well, you're here, learn everything from here, and forget everything from the other side.
We live like right next to each other, so we can't just take away one side and just be happy with the other. It can't work that way. You can't, like, there's always gonna be Mexicali and there's always gonna be Calexico. We can't just take it, because I've tried taking that part of me, like Mexicali. I think forgetting them is like, I almost feel like guilty, just like trying to forget, because I've tried. Like, he intentado olvidar cosas like de aquí, de allá. No se puede. You're always gonna like feel them. like in your mind, your body, and your soul, like literally.
Little by little, that other side of the border is unknown to them, when at some point it was everything they knew, right? So as an educator, it really pushes me to, instead of take away that from them and give them something else, kind of like give them that new thing, but still procure the thing that they had first. I think that's really important to me.
I mean, I'm very proud of identifying as not just transborder, because I think the term that we're adopting now, it didn't exist when I was transborder, and it's a very academic word that, you know, no one that's transborder actually uses or self-identifies as. When I think back about my experience here and whether I talked about this openly or not, we all know it's present, right? We all know that transborder students are quite present on this campus. It's still, I think it's getting there, and a film like this really helps in that regard, but I think there's still a lot of stigma that students carry around speaking openly. There's a lot that we don't know about potential repercussions that students might encounter or experience because they might be very open about that. I think, you know, I didn't feel back then that I could openly email a professor and say, I'm so sorry, but I spent 4 hours at the border and I am exhausted. And, you know, I might not be as alert in your class today for those reasons. When students aren't open, potentially because of the stigma, it prevents a lot of potential understanding and accommodation that a student can have with a professor. And that's difficult to navigate. I don't know that I could tell all students to have those open conversations with all professors on campus.
I believe that scheduling flexibility would be something very important for the SDSU community to be aware of. In addition to that, of course, to have any resources to help out folks for any other additional assessments or homeworks that are expected. To have the possibility for folks to really be able to participate on them, but not being a challenge to really progress on their education.
Un mensaje para los estudiantes transfronterizos es que encuentren su comunidad. Hay muchos espacios que están empezando a surgir por medio del liderazgo de transfronterizos para transfronterizos. No están solos, no tienen que hacer esto solos. Busquen y encuentren a su comunidad para poder estar unidos y poder pues salir adelante, sea los desafíos que vivimos o simplemente compartir y estar en comunidad y felicidad, that transborder joy, que es muy importante, juntos y en comunidad y en solidarity. The context where this interview is being conducted is quite interesting. We're in my hometown, Playas de Tijuana. Playas de Tijuana, it's just at the border, at the San Diego-Tijuana borderlands. And this is also a space where I grew up, crossing the border every day. This was home and really the headquarters. No matter where I was or where I've gone, I've always returned to this space, which is home.